All right, I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening for our pre-commission. We had a little bit of a scheduling conflict, so we had to reverse our schedule on our agenda. So we started with our executive session first, and now we are coming out here to do our pre-commission meeting. So we will start with that, Director Wong. Just before I ask any questions real quick about the agenda. All right, hearing none, we'll just go right into the director's report.
Madam President, Commissioners.
Madam President, I don't know if this is a good time to bring it up or not, but I do have two questions I would like to ask if David Serdar is here about the two items on the agenda relating the consent agenda 4 and 5. I have a couple of quick questions about that. We can deal with it after this. I don't want to interrupt that. Just a heads up.
Okay, thank you.
Is David here? Or
yeah, there he is in the background. All right.
All right, again, Madam President, Commissioners, good evening. A couple things for you. First off, I want to let you know that Tuesday, our maintenance team safely departed Boise for competition in Denver. Competition was scheduled for today. We're waiting for results. I'm sure they did incredibly well. And I want to let you know that this morning we did meet with Jim and Tyler Hunter regarding the discussions they had with you earlier. I think we had some very good positive steps forward. I'll come back to you in a week or two with the next rounds, but I think there is a solution to be had that will be beneficial to everybody involved in that. Thursday, Commissioners, I want to remind you we have the 10-mile ribbon cutting ceremony at 10 o'clock at the Overland Park and Ride. Commissioner May, you have the recommended talking points and such over to you on that. And then Friday, I want to let you know that it's that time of year again. We never seem to be out of it, but we're beginning our annual audit with Bailey, excuse me. And that's for materials and parts inventory, and of course we are ready for that. Commissioners, during last week's joint session, new information was offered regarding CCDC's proposed 5th and 6th Street conversion that your staff needed to review. Moreover, as a result of that meeting, multiple parties have reached out to us expressing their surprise at several inconsistencies and comments made during the presentation. To be clear, although this presentation was also a surprise to ACHC staff in its content, our following review is in no way intended to portray a negative perspective on the presenters, as we have and continue to have a great relationship with those key partners in our close and productive operations, providing first-class infrastructure for all users. Commissioners, I will also review the chronology of this proposed project, as most of you were not sitting on the commission when this project originated many years ago. So, 3 bottom lines up front. First, any implication that ITD supports the project is not accurate. After last week's presentation, we have received multiple calls and comments from members of the ITD board, ITD headquarters, and ITD District 3 that ITD has not in the past and does not currently support the proposed reconfiguration. Most significantly, although there have been ITD representation in outreach actions, we understand that at no time did ITD offer any supportive comments or gestures. As noted in the presentation, CCDC was not present at any of these discussions. Moreover, ACHC staff was surprised at the implication that ITD supported the project. Second, the implication that the state and specific members of the legislature appear to now support this is not accurate. It has been ACHC's understanding that Governor Otter's 1 June 2017 letter to ACHD's president at the time and the State Director of Administration's 17 April 2017 to Boise's former mayor and ACHC's former president clearly articulated their non-support for this proposed project. Absent from any additional communications from the state, we were under the impression that their position had not changed. After last week's presentation, we have been made aware of comments from legislators mentioned in the briefing that they have not in the past and currently do not support the proposed reconfiguration. Moreover, one legislator mentioned in the presentation cannot recall discussing this with Boise's representative. Third, any implication made that suggested that the delays and our length of time in this project should be addressed by the ACHC staff is misplaced. As noted in the presentation, CCDC is the lead and project manager for the 5th and 6th Street conversion. As such, ACHD staff, to include ACHD's project team, ACHD's Deputy Director of Plans and Projects, an ACHD Commissioner, and I have been asking CCDC to present to the Commission's briefing on their strategy, timing, costs, etc. for the last 9 months, with the first one finally being received by us on 24 January 2022. I would like to share a few timelines for your consideration. On 27 January 2022, CCDC staff responds that the city and CCDC have been coordinating. The city is the sponsor, and CCDC will be managing the consultant team. CCDC also states that they anticipate a presentation to the Commission soon. They also state their intent to revisit the project with ITD leadership at D3 to affirm their commitment to participate in this project. April 14th, 2022, ACHE staff again reached out to CCDC requesting an update to their timeline for 5th and 6th and when they would be able to come to the Commission. CCDC staff responded that they did not know, but they were hoping for a May presentation to the ACHD Commission. April 18th, 2022, Boise staff sends an email to ACHD and CCD addressing the right turn lanes and left turn lanes that were included in the Commission adopted alternative. They stated that they did not support this design feature. ACHD staff responded to the email stating that modifications to the concept would require Commission approval. ACHD staff also stated that ACHD was still awaiting a Commission presentation on 5th and 6th and that any concept modifications could be introduced at that time. June 27th, CCDC staff sent a detailed email requesting ACHD staff comment on a proposed scope of work and cost-sharing plan. ACHD staff was caught off guard by this email, considering that the promised Commission presentations and coordination had not occurred. June 29th, ACHD staff reaches out to the CCDC director to re-emphasize the request for a Commission-level presentation and strategy briefing. ACHD staff proposes July 22nd for this meeting. On June 29th, ACHD staff reminds CCDC that cooperation from the Idaho State Administrative Office and ITD is critical for this project. July 14th, CCDC states that the July 27th meeting will not work and that the city would prefer to discuss 5th and 6th at a future joint meeting. The joint meeting was held on 22 September. As you can appreciate, these issues truly surprised ACHD, ITD, and the state. Commissioner, during last week's presentation, it was suggested that the project should be a no-brainer. However, the complex project has a complicated history, including multiple Commission meetings, varied Commission decisions, a request for reconsideration, and conflicting ups and downs regarding project funding. As a review, the majority of ACHE staff and consultant work to analyze the 5th and 6th conversion took place in late 2016 and early 2017. The main projects of this work were a feasibility study and the development of alternatives. The alternatives consisted of select the no-build option as presented to the public, select the full conversion option to convert 5th and 6th Streets two-way from Myrtle Street to 4th Street as presented to the public, select the partial conversion option to convert all of 6th Street to two-way and convert 5th Street from Myrtle Street to Washington Street as presented to the public. Public involvement was robust and consisted of one-on-one stakeholder meetings with key business owners, developers, and corridor users, a public open house on April 13th, 2017, an online survey that ran from April 14th to the 27th, multiple emails and letters out to the public, tabling meetings at state and VA facilities on April 17th and April 20th, respectively. On May 23rd, 2017, the Boise City Council reaffirmed the city's request to convert 5th Street and 6th Street from one-way to two-way operations. However, the city's request included retaining parking near Main Street and Idaho Street rather than adding the turn lanes shown in the alternatives that the Commission had gone through and recommended in the feasibility study by our engineering experts. On May 25th, 2017, the project team met to discuss a preferred alternative which did not meet did not result in an agreed upon consensus. The majority of the technical team, made up primarily of ACHE staff, recommended the no-build option based on feedback from the public, concerns on traffic safety issues related to the absence of turn lanes and parking, and the uncertainty of operational benefits. Team members from the City of Boise and CCDC preferred a conversion alternative. At the June 28th, 2017 Commission meeting, the majority of the Commission found no compelling reason to make the change, which was opposed by the state of Idaho and the bulk of public input. The Commission, on a split vote, 3-2, selected the no-build option. After the Commission decision on the no-build option, the City of Boise argued that the Commissioners had not received all the necessary information and requested reconsideration. On July 12, 2017, the Commission granted the reconsideration request. On September 27, 2017, the Commission, again on a split vote, 3-2, approved the partial conversion of 5th and 6th Street in downtown Boise from one-way to two-way operation. The partial conversion would convert the streets to two-way operations up to Washington Street, where 5th would remain a one-way street to Fort Boise. This option would require new turn lanes on major cross streets to avoid traffic backups, a key finding of the feasibility study that evaluated the possible conversions. Additionally, it was noted that adding the turn lanes would cost some 48 on-street parking spaces. The original plan was to construct the conversion in 2019. At the direction of the prior Commission and through subsequent integrated 5-year work plan processes, the 5th and 6th Street conversion effort was classified as an economic development project, and funding from that program was suspended by the Commission, again on a split vote. The city continued to advocate for the project and such. During the 2022 integrated 5-year work plan process, the Commission included the 5th and 6th conversion for some funding in which design was to be held in 2023 and construction 24. However, with the understanding that CCDC would lead the project and re-engage the public and stakeholders to move forward in a consensus regarding this important project of the city. As noted earlier, from late December 2021 to July 2022, ACHE staff invited CCDC to present the plan for 5th and 6th Street to the Commission, as key elements would require Commission consideration, such as public outreach, modification to the approved alternative, turn lanes, parking, that sort of stuff, and coordination with ITD and the state of Idaho. On September 22, CCDC and Boise did present a high-level presentation to a joint meeting of the ACH Commission on this conversion. Commissioners, the following issues and concerns are still outstanding and to our knowledge have not been successfully addressed nor resolved. First, we have recently become aware of CCDC and Boise's intention to modify the approved alternative and remove key turn lanes that were identified in the feasibility study and the adopted alternative by you all, prior you alls. This is a significant change that will have impacts on the operations and functioning of the corridor. Second, we are confident that based on the input we have had in the last several days, that effective coordination with ITD, the state of Idaho, and other stakeholders that will be impacted by the conversion has truly not occurred and may have been misperceived by those involved in different communications. It may be misperceived. Finally, we anticipate that significant new public outreach efforts to re-engage the public will be a critical component for any efforts and/or options moving forward. Prior to public outreach, it seems prudent to have CCDC and Boise provide the Commission with a more in-depth plan regarding such outreach and possible changes to the current approved concept that the prior Commission did go forward. Commissioners, these are the facts. Now, what I'm going to say next I think is most important, and such of anything I said before. However, it is our belief that all of the key stakeholders should continue to review and assess any and all options that may offer a win-win solution to this very important project to Boise. And based on your directions, we are committed to just that perspective moving forward. So, Commissioners, that in a nutshell is my Director's report. I will stand for any questions that you may have.
Madam President.
Director Wong, Commissioner Goldberg.
I appreciate that, actually. I've been present for all of that.
Aye.
And as you were speaking, my memory was actually starting to improve. And I would give you very high marks for all the meetings that you or Stacy or whoever have obviously been watching to come up with this director's report. Wouldn't argue a thing was not completely accurate. My personal desire would be to have this come before the commission at the earliest possible time to continue to work on this and make a final decision, period.
That's the purpose of my report.
That's what I thought.
And I think just a little bit of refreshing of memory at our meeting with the city of Boise, I think that was my direction, that our staff would get spun up on the new information that was provided, and we would continue having the conversation so that we could move forward and get it onto the agenda so that we can have a
Oh, there's been so much that's changed since 2017.
Right. So I just think from listening to this and what we heard, just everybody needs to be on the same page moving forward. So, and certainly we need to have those discussions. So, Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, Madam President, thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Goldthorpe and I are the only two who were here at that time. It did get approved 3-2. Then the money was removed, and then the money was put back. So my perception of our meeting last week was simply, okay, we're moving forward with what we approved in 2017, and the city simply made a request. Can we make a couple of little adjustments? One is to a key turn lane. I think, with all due respect, Director, if we could have led with that and said, let's work on the few things, the adjustments the city would like to make, instead of doing the litany that has raised suspicion over the city's motives or actions, it would have been more productive. I found the whole litany of the history inappropriate for a discussion of moving forward. So I just want to lay that out there. I think we are working on the same plane. I'm very glad Mr. Lakey's here. I'm very glad Mr. Keene is here and is listening. I think our staffs can work really well together, and that tone won't continue in those discussions. Which is why I'm pleased that they're here and are going to move forward, and I can see a resolution to whether there's a turn lane is key or not key, can move forward on it. That's my perception of what we did last week. It was simply, yes, we are now funding what we approved back in 2017, and then the city simply asked, we'd like to make a few adjustments. As far as we were concerned, let's move forward as quickly as possible, because that delay by not funding it of a number of years has pushed us up against the expiration date of CCDC, which is very important, because a huge chunk of this is going to be funded by CCDC, and of course CCDC is taking the lead on this, which is appropriate.
Madam President, may I respond to that, or you prefer me not to?
I just want to make a correction here that the discussion happened when we were very grateful to receive the new information, and then going forward, I had asked during the meeting if we had a staff member to address or to participate in the discussion. We did not have anybody that was spun up to speed at that time. So the direction actually was our staff would engage, they would have the discussion, get spun up on the new facts, and then we would look to having it on our agenda as soon as possible. We never took any action or had a motion about going forward with previous funding. Like he specified, 3 of us weren't even here for that. So we would have to have a protracted discussion on that, but that's where we left that. So I think Commissioner Pickering has a comment, and then Director Wong, back to you.
Thanks, Madam President. So my question, Bruce, is, you just mentioned how you don't believe that certain coordination has occurred, but did you invite the city of Boise and CCDC to this famed meeting that you heard all this dissenting opinion about the project?
Madam President, Commissioner Pickering, we did not ask for comments. They came to us.
So, but you mentioned there was a meeting. Was there a meeting like after the joint? No, these are just unsolicited comments.
Yes.
Okay. And Madam President, I just want to reaffirm, because I agree with your points about what happened at the last meeting. I would emphatically move that we have this at our next meeting and as an action item, so we don't delay any further.
Okay, I think,
I agree.
I agree that we want to have that discussion and have it back. I think the first thing that needs to happen, and hopefully this can happen, starting as soon as possible, to have the discussions, because I think our staff, Boise staff and ITD.
But Madam President, I'm worried that if we just continue to have discussions, I'm not sure if you're saying discussion or action item, because I want to make sure that it's a discussion and an action item.
I think because we had some misrepresentation, I think our staff needs to engage with the city of Boise, and they need to speak with ITD. Chair Board Member De Lorenzo is shaking her head. So I think all parties need to talk so that we can move forward and make sure that what are we moving forward on? We can't do it in bits and pieces. We don't want to have it come back and have a waiver or an appeal or reconsideration. We want to make sure we got everything together so we can move forward.
I respectfully would disagree, because I think our CCDC partners, the city of Boise, has done a really great job of that public outreach. And so the fact that we are hearing concerns late to the game, I feel like those can still be captured and shared and heard at this next meeting. And we can weigh that in before we make a decision.
Madam President.
And I guess I do have one question. I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, did you make a comment? I think there was a reference to an ITD meeting, and you said you had not been present at that meeting. So have you had any discussions with ITD about this project? So CCDC is saying no. So that's what I'm saying. I just want everybody to get together.
And I agree. I'm just saying I don't think we need that warrants, second, multiple meetings or things like that.
I don't think it needs to take meetings. Everybody needs to be on the same page, or otherwise, what are we approving? I mean, I'm for getting it on the agenda and having the discussion and moving forward, but we have to come from a point of knowledge and accurate information. That's
Madam
but
President.
my thing is too, I'm also it just feels a little bamboozling, because we haven't received any of these complaints. You haven't shared them to us prior to this meeting. And I'm hearing a lot of these things, some circumspect, right? There hasn't been transparency about who we receive these complaints from. It hasn't been public record by any means. So the fact that we haven't had, as a commission, been formally briefed about this ahead of this long-winded director's report, I agree with Commissioner Hansen. I don't feel like this was appropriate use of your director's report. We should have been provided this information. If these were important partners, we should have heard that immediately from you. And so we don't have to delay, and we can have and weigh those, those different opinions at a more, I just want to underscore, I'm just concerned about the timing and us delaying even further. And there has been a robust public outreach process. We just heard from Downtown Boise Association and all the data that they've collected. And so I'm just concerned that from Jen. So I feel like we've done it, and we don't need to keep, I think we should have that conversation, but attached to that conversation, there should be action.
Madam President.
Commissioner Hansen, comment, and then Commissioner McKinney.
Yeah, Madam President, I think it wouldn't be difficult to just have a meeting next week to discuss the one thing that CCDC is asking, and that's the adjustment of that one turn lane. The rest was approved back in 2017, and it was approved. We recognize the state didn't like some of the things we were doing and preferred a no build. But we nonetheless approved it. And since that time, of course, the state's moved up to a lot of its facilities up to Chinden. They may want to come in and talk about that turn lane as well. But really, to my mind, all we're going to talk about is whether the change to that one little area, that turn lane and some parking associated with it, warrants holding it up even further, or whether we can approve that change. And so that's an appropriate thing to do next week. Of course, it's a very simple process. And I would actually also disagree with your characterization that there were misrepresentations. I think there were different interpretations, but I don't think there were misrepresentations.
Okay, noted. Commissioner McKinney?
I'm inclined to say that the director's recommendation is a good one. I think that whether there were misunderstandings or misrepresentations, we should be able to iron those out.
Yep.
I'm not certain that approving the project is going to be quite the simple process that Commissioner Hansen claims it will be. Nevertheless, I think we should move forward as the director has recommended.
Okay.
as soon as possible.
I'm in full agreement with what Commissioner McKinney just said. And in the immortal words of that pillar of wisdom and humor, Larry the Cable Guy, let's just get her done.
So no date.
So, Director Wong, do we want to ask if ITD would like to comment, or is there anything you would like to add to this discussion?
I would not think to speak for ITD.
Oh, okay. You would like to, and then we, yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you for being
Madam
here this evening.
President. Commissioners, thank you for taking up this important topic. We recognize it's important to the city of Boise, but there has been no conversation with ITD about this project or any changes to the project or bringing it back since it was discussed in the summer and fall of 2017. So yes, there have been a lot of things that have changed, but our position has not changed on that. So I believe that it would be appropriate for your staff and the ITD staff and CCDC, if they're the lead on that, to be having those conversations.
Madam President.
I agree with
Quick
that.
question for
Commissioner
Julie.
Pickering. Just here, let's just everybody everybody's going to get a chance to talk. Go right ahead.
I just want to say thank you for being here. It's
My pleasure.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. But also, I'm just really curious, what was ITD's role in the previous conversations back in 2017? Because, and you know, forgive me, am I, newer? I wasn't part of those conversations, but in the joint meeting with the city of Boise, I had asked, how is ITD in part of these conversations? And that's kind of where this all came to be. And my point was, just the concerns I personally have about the intersections at 5th and 6th with Front and Myrtle. And the mayor and staff said very much that, nothing really is going to be happening in those intersections. And there really isn't there isn't going to be anything that's touching your right of way. And so that's where I'm kind of wondering is what is your role and previously and then considering this project?
Well, nothing has changed previously to today. It's Front and Myrtle, which is a state highway that transitions right through downtown Boise. But a state highway operates differently than a city street. So that is the concern then and now.
But even, so it's simply just, it's not that, the mayor, and it seemed like there wasn't a lot of changes though, aside from, of course, making it a one-way to a two-way. And so are there other design elements that you were concerned about, or was it just the mechanics of the project?
There were design elements, mechanics overall from the beginning that the state was not in favor of. So I don't believe anything has changed there from the standpoint of the state, which is why I believe the staff needs to be having this conversation and bringing it back to the commissioners.
So just to make sure I'm clear, so IT was never in favor of this project?
We were never in favor of this project. That is correct.
And did you say that your last conversation or joint discussion about this was in 2017?
The last conversation I personally had was in 2017 when the district engineer at that time was Amy Revis. I think some of you knew her. And she was here before Caleb took over that role. I cannot speak for Caleb. If you would like to ask him that same question.
Sure. We appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
Might as well get it on the record. Just state your name and address, please.
Caleb Lakey, Keene, Idaho. Madam President, Commissioners, I have not been involved in direct discussions about 5th and 6th. I have had meetings with Mayor McLean. We do that on about a biannual basis to discuss several topics regarding transportation in the city of Boise. And this has been mentioned as something that Boise still had interest in. I acknowledge the fact that interest in it, but we had not had discussions about conversion or moving forward with conversion of 5th and 6th Street during my tenure as district engineer in District 3.
All right, thank you, Caleb. Question for Caleb?
Question, yeah.
Commissioner Hanson?
Caleb, so do you take a position on the proposed adjustment to the turn lane? The one change in the actual plan that was approved? Have you taken a position on that, for or against, or?
Madam President, Commissioner. The turn lane you referred to, I'm not familiar with. I don't know exactly what turn lane you're referring to. But to the previous question, there is a new signal proposed as part of this development, or this change. That would be at the corner of 5th Street and Myrtle. And so that is a change in infrastructure. That is a change on ITD's system. And there are impacts to the system. If we're going to change from a one-way street to a two-way street, it's going to change the timing on the street, it's going to change the function and the way the system all works together. So there are considerations that do impact ITD's infrastructure and ITD's maintenance of the state highway system, yes.
Madam President, Caleb.
Mr. Hanson?
So is this, in a way then, ITD or your district requesting a reconsideration of the decision that was made in 2017, a full reconsideration? Because we did have that reconsideration and we did vote in favor of the modified plan. The main objection from the state of Idaho with regard to state employees coming down 5th and 6th from employment locations was that it might cause a few seconds, maybe a minute or two delay in getting onto and off of the connector. The state has since moved many of its facilities up to Chinden. So that concern, which was the subject of the governor's letter back 5 years ago, as far as I'm concerned, isn't that. So but you would like a reconsideration of the decision that was made 5 years ago with respect to the overall impact of a conversion on the connector.
Madam President, thank you. Commissioner Hanson, I'm going to suggest that this is a discussion that needs to be happening with staff because your commission has to vote on this. My board has to vote on this. So I think that since the work has not been done that you typically see done on a project of this magnitude, yes, it was done in 2017, but for us to have found out that it was being approved when we weren't even informed it had come back up is putting the staff in an unpleasant position, your staff and ours, and I think they need to be talking about this before it comes back to a public meeting.
So Madam President and Julie, I appreciate that. You're also a board member and you've approved many projects in the past, and sometimes funding for those projects cause you to shelve that for a while. When you then take that back off the shelf, then you would probably prefer not to then reopen the entire public process to relitigate or reconsider the entire project. That's what we're trying to figure out now, is by now putting it into our budget, which we've approved. Our budget was approved in August. So we have approved this in our budget. It's back on the shelf. CCDC's and the city are asking for some adjustments, an adjustment. But so now we're trying to figure out, do we just deal with that adjustment, or should we treat this like a reconsideration of the entire project? Because by refunding it now, all bets are off, and now we have to look at everything else.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, again, ITD has never been in favor of this project, so
Granted.
I don't believe that there has been funding approved at the state level. So how your process works, I'm not completely familiar with.
And I think the first step right now is our staff in the city of Boise and ITD, they meet and just figure out where we are. I don't think we're talking about reopening the whole public process, et cetera. I think there's some things that our staffs need to have that conversation. We don't want to get too deep into the weeds here this evening. But I think we can direct everybody to get together, toot sweet, and start having the discussions and getting things.
Madam President?
Just a moment. I was directing that. Would that be amenable to you?
I believe the staff need to be working on this because I think that's where it should have come from to begin with. And, perhaps there were a couple of missteps, but if it's going to happen, or if anything is going to happen, it needs to come with the thought put forward that we're all working together.
I agree.
That would be my sincere appreciation if the staff could work on it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Madam President.
Madam President, yeah, just one more point. So I just want to say thank you. I echo that as well. I just want to make sure that we have a deadline of when we're going to bring this to a vote so that the staffs can work together and we can get as much information out and not kind of delay and kind of bring this up again and again. I'd rather have an assigned date
So
that we will
I think
have
we can
that
give
vote.
that direction to staff to start working right now. We don't need to wait and put it on agenda and have an official motion to do that. I think they can start tomorrow.
Oh, I'm wondering, yes, start tomorrow, of course, but I'm wondering if we can have an assigned date for when we'll have it for a vote.
Maybe,
I'd prefer that too.
yeah,
What do you want, 2 weeks?
wow, I think it would be, what's the input from staff? I don't know how.
Madam President, Commissioners, if I can make a recommendation, I think that the idea of having a firm date is a good one. I think that puts everything into motion. It puts it at a priority. Understand, of course, there'll be other things that go to the side. If this is the Commission's top priority, I would recommend probably the first week in November, the first Wednesday, that we come back to you with the pluses and minuses, and then it's over to you. And I would like to say this, if I could, Madam President, Commissioners, Commissioner Hanson, we're going to have to agree to disagree on this. My role is to provide facts to the Commission. I provided facts to the Commission. I think that the as you saw from your other fellow commissioners, most of them anyway, those were very important and were well received to understand what had happened in the past. 3 of you have not been here. You needed to hear that across the board. And I hope you also appreciate the fact that our commitment to making this work was what I emphasized at the very end for all of you. So I don't appreciate your comments about the appropriateness or not. It's your call, of course. But at the end of the day, we are going to have to agree to disagree.
All right, thank
Madam
you.
President, I
Thank
think
you,
exactly
Director
the
Wong.
direction.
I wonder
President, I have a question
I
of
wonder
you.
if we can just go ahead, maybe not like, okay, it's going to be taken care of in 2 weeks, but by, not to exceed the next 30 days, that it will be back to us. And if they're have reached
We will be back to
this,
you
then they can come to us and it would be sooner than
first week
that.
in November, if that's good for the Commission.
I think that's a month.
But it might be sooner, but it
Might
might
be
not
sooner.
go beyond.
Madam President, my only thing is, could we invite, I just want to, if we do wait a month, I would like to hear from the city and CCDC to make sure that that timeline would still be okay.
Absolutely.
Or is this a 2-week or,
I think not to go beyond
Right.
the 1st of November before we're back. And like,
We will do our best.
no, I want to hear from them though.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
I think they're trying to figure out who's going to
Exactly.
come up.
Madam President, just want to
That being,
clarify something
okay,
you said
just 1 sec.
while they're discussing.
While they're drawing straws.
And that was.
Go ahead, Commissioner Hanson.
Yes, Madam President, I agree with your statement that we do not want to reopen the decision that was made in 2017, and that we'll only be discussing those new things that CCDC and the city is requesting with respect to the plan. That's what I heard you say. We will not be reopening the entire project, but only discussing those things that were different that the city and CCDC.
Well, and I think that will come from the staff working together and coming up with, where we are. And I would assume that it's probably going to be maybe a lot easier than we're thinking. And so let them meet
Right,
and
but
come back to us.
We're not reopening. You said we're not reopening the decision.
I said, I don't think we need to reopen the whole public process, but I think that will be contingent upon what all 3 groups come back to us with, no later than the 1st of November. Does that make sense?
First
I don't
Wednesday
want
in November.
pardon me?
First Wednesday in November.
First Wednesday in
But
November.
let's hear from
Yeah.
Director Keene though.
So that's that would be my expectation, that would be determined by the 3 agencies working together. So, don't sit down. You're
Good to hear
welcome
from the city.
You're welcome to come up here. Thank you, Director Wong.
Thank you all, and thank you for all that you do. Did you want me to speak to the timing on the next meeting?
Yes, if you go ahead and state your name and your address.
Yeah, it's Tim Keene. I'm
Welcome back.
my exact address or?
Or city.
City of Boise.
Yeah, City of Boise.
If you don't want to.
Well, we commit to, as we said last week in our lengthy meeting with the mayor and city council, working quickly on this, and would commit in this case, given the conversation tonight, to get with ITV and ACHD quickly next week so that we can move this along quickly. Certainly, we would be in position, provided those meetings go well, to come back to you in 2 weeks, as you suggested. The one thing I'd mention about schedule and timing is just what we discussed last week, which is CCDC has this real deadline related to their funding, which we're given a construction project of this significance we're worried about. So I think at this point, speed is important. So we would want to try to get with all those involved at the staff level to come back to you quickly. And I think 2 weeks is certainly plenty to get back to you and report on how those discussions went.
And I think if, after everybody gets together and it's in 2 weeks, I think that's fine. I'm just putting a deadline on there, not to exceed. So if something comes together in some type of plan, you can come back next week or, in 2 weeks, but no longer than. So that's where I'm coming from on that one.
Thank you.
But I think we all recognize the desire to get this done quickly. So, yeah, thank you very much. So, commissioners, is that for our direction? All right,
Yeah.
to move forward on that, not to exceed. Okay, we're good to go. All right. Board member De Lorenzo, is that, and Caleb, we will reach out. We will reach out and facilitate getting that started. So, all right. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. And Commissioner Hanson had a couple of questions on the
Dave Serdar, yeah.
consent
Dave
agenda.
has and it's similar to what I've asked in the past. Item 4 has a surplus property on State Street, and you haven't been able to sell it.
Which number are you?
Item 4 on the consent agenda. So live public auction didn't work, so we want to give it to the chief of staff to negotiate the sale of the property, but not anything lower than $660,000, right?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, yes, the property did not sell.
Not surprised.
There are processes involved where a sign does go up for the property. If there is an offer, it can either be negotiated at the chief of staff level, or if there is a mechanism to bring it back to the commission. If it's, I think you're insinuating, not insinuating, I think you're saying essentially that you'd mentioned a concern about the appraisal price in the past. So
I mean, given the configuration of that between two, very busy street roads, all that concrete surrounding it,
Correct.
It really doesn't have much commercial value. And so I guess my question is, so nobody bids on it, or they come back and say, oh, I'll give you $50,000 for it or something. What's the next step? If the city of Boise says, hey, we just as soon take it over, and maybe we can do something like an entryway for the neighborhood or something like that. But the city's not going to give us $660,000, or maybe the neighborhood association's not going to do. What's the process?
The process is we can bring it back to this commission with that written offer, and we can go through there.
So that's my it's like it's devoid of much value given its location and configuration. Except maybe to a public entity or nonprofit who wants to do a neighborhood, or the business that's located in that area.
Mr. Price?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, the law doesn't really take into account these kind of unusual circumstances. And in us dealing with surplus property, we're following the statute. There's a process. that if we get a different valuation, we can bring it back to the commission and you can consider it if it's even substantially less the appraised value. If it's not, then we have to bring it back to you. The other thing is if the city or any other governmental entity is interested in that, we can transfer ownership to that with or without consideration. And the commission at the time when we come back and listing it, if that's the decision of the commission, so be it. And there's that process. So I don't think Dave knew about the intergovernmental agreement and transferring of real property to other governmental entities. And I just wanted to clarify that for you, that it's most certain we do it all the time.
That's good. Yeah.
Very
Well,
good,
Dave
thank
knows
you.
I don't want to see these things on, I want to see these things on the tax rolls. The second one, the next item, number 5, is kind of similar. It's devoid of value because it's too narrow after the Maple Grove and Victory redo. That neighbor, the only person who's probably likely to be interested in it is if they want to extend their side yard. But they're not going to come up. I mean, that's $260,000. $206,000 is a huge amount. So I assume the same process is, it's like the more we can facilitate getting that off the onto the tax rolls, the better. And frankly, so I assume that process, if that neighbor comes back and says, no way, I'll give you this, you'll come back to us.
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, we can certainly bring back any offer that we receive on that to this commission. That is within our authority to do, or within your purview to do so.
These
Very
should
good.
be on the tax rolls. I know there's a lot of them out there, and you've done a good job trying to find them.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Madam President, one question. Since Mr. Hunt is here from VRT, I just wanted to ask you what you wanted to do about his presentation.
Go ahead and go with it. Yeah, I didn't see Stephen, I'm sorry. There you are. Okay, we can certainly do that. Stephen, if you'd like to come up. This was the one that we had moved around with our executive sessions. So welcome Stephen from VRT, and he's going to share with us the findings of the State Street Transit operational analysis. So welcome, Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Madam President. Glad to be here, and thank you for the flexibility on the scheduling.
You
I
bet.
wasn't aware I was on the pre-commission meeting, so hurried down here as
Always
fast as I
willing to
could.
punt.
So thank you for that. And I apologize for any issues there. So tonight, I just wanted to come and share with you the findings of the State Street Transit operational analysis presentation that's just coming up. So this is a study that has been done in coordination with our partners, including Ada County Highway District, the City of Boise, Garden City, and ITD. So the purpose of tonight's presentation, I just was going to go over the objectives and background of the transit operational analysis,
Okay, very
and go over what we found relative to the HOV lanes, bus pullouts, transit priority treatments along the corridor, and then touch briefly on the project portfolio that was included in the TOA, and then an overview of the findings. So first of all, the objectives and goals of the transit operational analysis. We started with the objective of trying to evaluate two specific things that are currently stated in the State Street Transit State Street Transit and Traffic Operational Plan, the TTOP, and that is the HOV lanes, the 6th and 7th lanes that are in the State Street TTOP are identified as HOV lanes, and bus pullouts. So we wanted to evaluate those treatments and identify if there were any different transit priority treatments that could be utilized to result in the same kind of operation for general purpose traffic and transit that did not require HOV lanes or bus pullouts. The reason being related to the HOV lanes is that we don't have the authority to build those right now. So we were looking for ways to still achieve the objectives of the State Street TTOP within the current legislation. We also were looking at how we could utilize existing infrastructure to develop improvements to the transit in the interim as we build out the full State Street corridor. And the TOA was intended to develop a project portfolio or portfolio of projects that VRT could begin implementing and advancing the vision of the TTOP. The corridor study went from actually just a little bit past Glenwood, but Glenwood we'll say to 23rd. This image shows the varying roadway widths throughout the State Street corridor. The TTOP identified a locally preferred alternative cross-section, which is shown here, of 7 lanes with a raised median and 2 lanes on the outside as HOV lanes. The transit alternative analysis the transit operational analysis looked at different alternatives for how we use that right-of-way space. And so there's the TTOP alternative, which is 4 general purpose lanes, 2 HOV lanes, and with bus pullouts and an attached bike lane. The 2 alternatives that we looked at were actually having 6 general purpose lanes, in-lane bus stops on those outside curb lanes, with enhanced transit priority treatments along those lanes, such as right lane or right turn except buses, queue jumps, etc., and then separated multi-use path, pulling the bike lane off the road and as a separated use. To note, in both the second and third alternatives, there are no HOV lanes. The third alternative again looked at 6 GP lanes, in-lane transit stops, targeted transit priorities, and a separated multi-use path. So we really quickly to talk about the kinds of transit priority treatments we looked at. One is a right turn except buses. These are used in areas throughout Ada County. This is an example on State Street where at State and 27th, there's a right turn only except buses where there's a receiving lane on the far side. So we looked at using this kind of treatment at other places along the State Street corridor. The other is not explicitly used yet in Ada County, which is a transit priority or queue jump, which creates essentially a section of bus only space that allows the bus to get around a queue that's maybe happening at an intersection, gets into the head of that line, so when the light turns green, they're able to proceed through the intersection. So that's what a queue jump is. We also looked at applying different queue jump treatments along the State Street corridor in the second alternative. So what we found was when we looked at the State Street corridor and the intersections along it, we evaluated the level of service of the individual intersections as well as the travel time along the corridor in the peak period. So on this slide, you can see the LOS of the different intersections as well as the AM and the PM corridor travel times. This is existing conditions 2020 numbers. So the first scenario looked at the State Street TTOP with HOV lanes and pullouts. For each of these scenarios, we forecasted the future condition of 2035. So again, you can see the LOS of the individual intersections and then the corridor travel times. So the corridor travel times go up, a few intersections fall in their LOS between existing conditions and 2035 with the TTOP treatments. The second scenario, again, 6 general purpose lanes with in-lane transit and pretty aggressive treatments for transit, had a higher impact on general purpose traffic. So again, I'll just kind of go back and forth between these two, scenario 1 and scenario 2. You'll notice there are some intersections that fall in their LOS. You'll also notice that the corridor travel times go up slightly from 8.1 to 8.2 minutes, from 10.2 minutes to 10.7 minutes. The third scenario we looked at was, again, general purpose, all 6 travel lanes are general purpose travel lanes, but using in-lane transit stops and more focused transit priority treatments. We were able to actually realize an improvement over the State Street transit, the State Street TTOP by not having the 6th and 7th lane be exclusive to HOV, and by having the stops in lane, we were able to improve the transit travel times as well. So in this case, compared to the first scenario, notice there are a few intersections that actually improve in their LOS, and the corridor travel times go down from the State Street TTOP analysis. So that's what we did for general purpose traffic. We also looked at what the impacts had on transit, because again, our objective was to make sure that these scenarios resulted in the same or better transit performance and general purpose travel. So we were able to achieve the similar or improved general purpose travel compared to the TTOP, and then looking at transit. The biggest difference is not having the bus pullouts. We were able to realize quite a bit of savings for transit travel time compared to pullouts with having in-lane stops. So basically, being able to stop in lane saved us a bunch of time. And so you can see on this chart where we're looking at how those treatments played out both at smaller intersections and larger intersections like BMP. So the biggest type of improvement, namely having in-lane stops, had anywhere between 30 and 40 second, 30 to 40 seconds of improved time for transit, and had a 5 to 15 second impact on or improvement over GP compared to the HOV lane. So basically what we were able to find is opening up that lane to general purpose traffic allowed the remaining two lanes also to perform better, if that makes sense. So not having those 6th and 7th lanes be exclusive to HOV makes general purpose flow better. It also, being able to stop in lane, makes the transit work better. The other two scenarios with the enhanced, so scenario 2 is enhanced transit right turn lanes and the queue jumps. In the larger intersections, you started to see a degradation in the improvements to transit and to GP because of the amount of queuing that happened around those intersections. If you essentially took a lane for transit as you approach some of those larger intersections, it had both an impact on the general purpose traffic, but also that would end up spilling over into the transit's ability to get into that queue jump lane. So there ended up being a detrimental impact both to GP and to transit if you use those kinds of treatments there. So the outcome, or the long and short of this slide that I wanted to point out, is that we found that you could right size the treatments to the intersections along the corridor to result in improvements both to general purpose and to transit treatments and to transit service. So with that in mind, the TOA went through and looked at each of the different intersections each of the bus stops along the corridor, and looked at what could be done to reduce the amount of dwell time, the amount of time that the bus is stopped at a bus stop. So how can we make that transaction happen faster, which has improvements both to transit travel time as well as to any general purpose traffic or any other traffic that's happening around the bus. So those included things like elevated platforms, moving stops to the far side, removing conflicts between bikes and transit. So that's where moving the in-lane, the bike lane that's not separated to a separated bike lane. Those things all began to come together as we looked at how can we improve or reduce the dwell time at transit stops. These were the toolkits that we looked at there to go into each of the different transit stops along the corridor. That resulted in, wrong direction. That resulted in a portfolio of 10 different projects where we were looking at making improvements at these intersections that both reduced the dwell time, sped up transit operations, and made improvements to non-motorized travelers. This was the list of projects that we used to develop the RAISE grant application that we put together, and where we partnered with ACHD on the 23rd Street and 27th Street improvements. Each of the different projects ended up with a scorecard, not quite a scorecard, but a summary like this, where we looked at the improvements to non-motorized transit and motorized general purpose travel, as well as costs and travel time savings. And again, this was the basis for the projects that we selected for the RAISE grant. So in summary, the transit operational analysis found that in-lane stops had a better impact for transit than using bus pullouts. Using in-lane stops in general purpose had a better impact on general purpose traffic than having HOV lanes. That using targeted transit priority treatments was better for general purpose traffic and transit than corridor-wide treatments. That using It also found that we can use some of the phased construction that is going on State Street now to pilot some of those treatments. So where we have wider lanes or lanes that don't go all the way through, we have extra right away that's not being fully utilized. We can use that to pilot some of the transit treatments that we would like to see along the corridor. And the portfolio of projects that came out of the TOA provide us with partnership opportunities, which we've already taken advantage of with RAISE and look forward to continuing to do with future projects. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Stephen. It's always very appreciated when you come back in here and give us updates. I'm just curious about one thing.
Sure.
I drive that State Street all the time. So I was just curious about the more favorable stats if you have the in-lane stops vis-a-vis the pullout, because I know just driving in, if you get behind the bus and it stops, you can just almost hear the groans from the other cars. So I guess I'm just curious how that really improves maybe a little bit of the transit time, but having them stop right in the lane, what does that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Madam President, thank you for that
It just
question.
seems a little counterintuitive, so I just.
And it bears, it warrants further explanation, and it has to do with the baseline. So let me jump back to kind of what those comparisons we're looking at. So the comparison was not like 6 general purpose travel lanes with in-lane stops versus 6 general purpose travel lanes with pullouts. What the comparison was to the existing T-top, which has HOV lanes and pullouts. And so when we were able to show that by having in-lane stops but opening up that 6th and 7th lanes, which are currently in the T-top identified as HOV lanes, that made the corridor perform better than having those be HOV lanes. Stopping in lane does have an impact on traffic, absolutely, it does. But that impact is less than taking that whole lane and identifying it as an HOV lane. Ultimately, the trade-off that you're highlighting here is saying we're willing to accept some of the friction that's going to come with having in-lane stops in those 6th and 7th lanes because we identified this as a multimodal corridor that's trying to move more people through in less space. And so compared to the existing T-top, this solution would perform better, both for general purpose and transit. But it doesn't mean that there are no impact to general purpose because transit is there.
Sure, certainly. Okay, thank you, Stephen.
Madam President?
Questions or comments?
Madam President?
She had motioned first. Then
go
I'll
ahead.
come to
Thanks, Madam President. I just want to say thank you, Stephen. I just want to applaud that you did this analysis to begin with, because I think it's just so beneficial to not only VRT, but to agencies like ourselves to understand what are the impacts, pro or con, of all these different design elements that we're all talking about for so long. So I think it just gives us some added details about the projects that we're currently partnered with you on. And I noticed consistently how the 27th Street intersection just was a low performer in all of these different scenarios compared to a lot of those other intersections. And so just how grateful I am that we're partnering with you on the RAISE grant to improve that intersection, and in the design phase and all that good stuff, of course. But I just think, again, it just demonstrates how important the partnerships need to be, because these road segments are just so nuanced, and having more research to back up our decisions is always a good thing. So thank you.
you. All right, Commissioner McKinney.
Thank you. Stephen, thank you for the presentation. Just to clarify, this entire stretch of Highway 44 that we're talking about, the entire stretch of State Street that we're talking about is all state highway, is it not? Or am I wrong? Am I mixed up on part of that? Is part of it ACHD and part of it state?
You're asking a part of State Street under ACHD jurisdiction?
Well,
yes.
Right. The whole section that we're talking about, part of it's under ACHD jurisdiction, part of it is under state jurisdiction. Is that correct?
That is correct. However, I believe all of it is designated as a state highway, same as Broadway. Right.
Right. Sure. Okay. So in any case, what we're looking at then is whatever changes are being recommended here, you will be talking about these both to us and to ITD when it comes to making whatever changes are made to put this into operation. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, yes.
Okay. But at this point, we're just looking at the analysis and what it shows, any concrete proposals about what to actually do in different places. That's down the road. Is that a fair assessment?
Mr. McKinney, yes, Commissioner McKinney, that's correct. My purpose in coming tonight was to bring up to speed on what the TOA was about. We expect to come back and talk about potential next steps, which could include actions, yes.
Okay, good. And thank you for the clarification with Commissioner May. I think that was important to recognize that it's always important in these kinds of analyses to understand what's our comparison. What are we comparing it to? So one thing's better than another, but we got to make sure what we're comparing it to. So I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson.
Madam President and Stephen, thank you. I would agree with Commissioner McKinney. The data that you've been able to pull together has been really helpful, and it's gotten us to the point we've sort of hit this wall of the state won't let us have HOV lanes, even though we've all agreed these 5th and 6th lanes are only going to be HOV lanes. So this gets us past that, and we say, okay, there's still complete travel lanes in the other 4, 5, I guess if you count the center turn lane. These will be added as travel lanes as well, plus in-lane bus stops. So it sort of adds to both. So the data gives us the ability to move forward and not worry about HOV lanes going forward. We can change. Obviously we'll have to come back together and say, okay, we might put HOV lanes on some other road somewhere else, but right in this place, it's not here. Right now, that space where we've designated HOV lanes, there's no traveling on. There's, in some places it's not even paved. So this has been very helpful, and sort of ever since I've been on this commission, that HOV lane, because of the state opposition or the state refusal to let local or state use HOV lanes, has meant something we've already agreed to can't be done. And now we can say, we can do this in this way, and it'll work. The other, of course, is the analysis. I really appreciate this, the analysis on the level of service, but you also, level of traffic stress is really critical in this area for people crossing. And I think in each of those treatments, my guess is the level of traffic stress would be improved with the crossings and the other proposed treatments to each of those intersections. But I don't know if we've used that data. That data was part of this metrical analysis.
We did not use level of stress for autos or
pedestrians and cyclists.
Other than with the specific projects that are in the TOA, we did talk about level of service for pedestrians there.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Stephen? No. Well done, Stephen. Thank you for bringing this to us. We appreciate you keeping us in the loop.
Thank you very
much. We look forward to your next visit. Thank you. All right, with that, let's get this meeting started. Welcome, everyone. If you'd please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item. Do we have a motion?
Yes, so moved.
Second. All those in favor to adopt the agenda?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a commissioner or a citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All consent agenda items are commission action items unless noted. Do we have a motion?
Madam President, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. That takes us to our first item on our regular agenda. It is resolution number 2383, vacation of public right-of-way for Jump Project, Boris Street and Alley, request for adoption. And we welcome back Mr. Serdar. Welcome.
It is a public hearing.
Oh, it is a public hearing. Okay. I will open the public hearing.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Madam President, Commissioners, thank you. For the record, David Serdar, right-of-way supervisor for Ada County Highway District. This is a vacation, and as said, it is a vacation, and it's the decision briefing and the public hearing for that vacation. The vacation is for an alley and a portion of what was known as Boris Street. ACHD received an application from JRS Properties LLP for 0.17 acres of property known as Boris Street. The appraised value of this property is $396,000. Here is a vicinity map of the property. As you can see, just kind of as you go towards the vicinity on the picture there, you can see much of the jump development. A portion of this right of way, about where that kind of round tower is, was developed, was actually vacated in 2012. And this actual piece was slated to be vacated in 2012 as well. Here is a close-up of the property. At the time of the previous vacation, JRS Properties didn't have ownership of this kind of corner piece on the bottom side of the vacation. They have consolidated the ownership in the area, and that's why they've brought this application forth at this time. The appraised value was established on August 4th, 2022 at $396,000. ACHD staff does support this vacation for the following reasons. All other right-of-ways within the block have been previously vacated. This, as was stated earlier, this was not vacated at the time because the corner was not owned by JRS Properties or the Jump Development. They have consolidated the ownership in the area, and vacation of the street will not substantially impact access to the property. The vacation was anticipated as part of the approval of this development back in 2012. It is staff recommendation that the commission adopt and sign resolution number 2383, authorizing the proposed vacation of public right-of-way as applicants have completed all commission and staff requirements. I will remain standing for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sirdar. Commissioners, any questions or comments for Dave?
Madam President?
Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. This was on the agenda a couple months ago. It got pulled. It still says in the staff report that Boise City had some concerns. They wanted to make sure what the purpose of the development, because land use is their bailiwick, not ours. Obviously, this, when we vacate it, it'll be used for some purpose. And the city wanted to know what that was. So I assume in the intervening time since it was on our agenda and today, those questions have been answered. The city now knows what the land use is and they have no objection. They've withdrawn their objection.
President May, Commissioner Hanson, I do not know that the city's withdrawn their objection. I do know that the applicant has met with the city and went through their concerns with the city, and I do know the applicant is here and does intend to speak on that issue.
Okay.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
We'll go ahead and call him up.
Madam President, is someone from the city here to also speak to it?
No,
I will
don't
take
think
that
so.
as an indication.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sirdar. We'll go ahead and have the applicant come up and
Mr. Conrad?
welcome, sir. Go ahead and have you state your name and address, please.
Name is Vic Conrad. I'm here on behalf of the applicant JRS Properties 3 LLLP. Address is 1099 West Front Street, Boise. And Madam President, members of the commission, we are in agreement with the staff's recommendation and its conditions of approval contained in the report dated September 13th, 2022. These conditions include approving the vacation subject to public and private utilities within the vacated area. As Dave mentioned, this request is completing a vacation we began in 2012. And at that time, we had a last-minute change of heart with an adjacent landowner, which resulted in excluding what remains, which you see today. The issue was resolved with the eventual acquisition of that parcel, and now we are back trying to complete what we started in 2012. In 2012, the city of Boise supported the vacation, and we were a little surprised to receive the city's letter recommending denial, so we reached out looking for some clarity on what the city meant regarding connectivity and essential public functions contributed by the remnant parcels. On May 17th, 2022, we met on site with Karen Gallagher, the city's transportation senior planner. And during this meeting, Ms. Gallagher explained the city is struggling downtown in some locations with businesses storing solid waste on public rights-of-way and obstructing access for the city's solid waste contractor to perform collections. Knowing this, we then showed Ms. Gallagher how we store solid waste on site and provide access for Republic, who we need to perform the vital role in collecting solid waste. After confirming our on-site storage and access plans do not involve public rights-of-way, Ms. Gallagher seemed very satisfied with our practices. However, in a follow-up conversation with Ms. Gallagher after our meeting, she informed us that the city of Boise was not going to change its position. As conditioned in the ACHD staff report, JRS Properties 3 is willing to accept the vacated area subject to the existing utility services located within the proposed vacation. Because this area is entirely interior to our site, we are not aware of any connectivity or public functions this vacation will interfere with. And with that, if I have any time left, I'd like to reserve it to any comments or questions if the commission will allow.
You bet. Thank you very much, Mr. Conrad. Any comments here before we
Just
ask
a
for
question?
testimony?
Yes, sir.
Madam President, thank you, Mr. Conrad. I appreciate it. So the last conversation you had with the city was back in June?
No, it's been more recent. I would say July.
July, okay. Subsequent to when we pulled it off the agenda before. Okay. And so no other communications either from Ms. Gallagher or anyone superior to her over in the city?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna assume that they're not worried about it, and then not question anybody's motives and just say they're just not worried about it.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Mr. Conrad, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Spencer, do we have anyone here to?
Nobody online, and Mr. Conrad
Was the only one that signed up? All right. Mr. Serdar, do you have anything else you'd like to add before I close the public hearing? No? All right. Then with that, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And commissioners, this is now before you.
Yes, Madam President.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, I would make a resolution that we approve and adopt the resolution number 2383, which is the vacation of public right-of-way for the jump project, Boris Street and Alley.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, we have a motion before us. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Conrad, thank you very much for being here. All right, our next item, Rose Hill Street Temporary Traffic Calming, Roosevelt Street, Vista Avenue Concept Adoption. And this is also a public hearing. All right, I've got it, made the notes here.
The best kind.
I will go ahead and open the public hearing, and we will welcome Ms. Inselman, Senior Transportation Planner, to give us the update. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam President, Commissioners. For the record, Christy Inselman, I am the Planning and Programming Supervisor, and I'm here seeking the preferred adoption for the Rose Hill Temporary Traffic Calming Concept Study. So just quick reminders on the corridor. It runs Roosevelt to Vista on Rose Hill. We heard from the residents and the neighborhood area that there were some needs along the corridor in order to calm traffic. That came out of the Rose Hill and Owyhee intersection, and at the direction of the commission to go back out and have a conversation. So we heard that they wanted improvement for crossings of Rose Hill for people walking and biking, slowing motor vehicle speeds. On average, they're going about 5 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. Providing bike lanes along the corridor, potentially maintaining the center turn lane and maintaining on-street parking. Those are in order of the ranking we heard from the residents. We've had quite a bit of public outreach for this project. We've had 6 stakeholder meetings, multiple online surveys, public involvement meeting, and a lot of door-to-door outreach to the community, as well as presentations to our advisory committees. And you can see from those percentages on the side there, that what came in the highest, that people were driving too fast, biking on the corridor doesn't feel safe, there's not a facility for them today, and crossing the street doesn't feel safe. So we came to you a couple weeks ago with the 3 alternatives, the corridor alternatives, as well as the traffic calming elements. I'll go through the corridor first. So the recommendation is for alternative 2. And what that does is it provides bike facilities along the corridor, and those would be a painted buffer with some candlesticks and different treatment options in there, like an armadillo, as well as it would remove the center turn lane where it currently exists. And there are 2 segments of the corridor that have it today. There's one that does not. So Lake Todd to Roosevelt does not currently have a center turn lane. It would retain parking on the corridor on one side of the street, and we would alternate that side, and the location of that parking would be dependent on where we're currently seeing the highest use of parking. And that's primarily the first segment and the very last segment. And so we would alternate that, and one of the benefits of that is we kind of create a chicane effect when we do that. This would all be done within the existing infrastructure of the roadway. We're not looking to tear anything out. We're just adding what's onto what's there today. The estimated cost for the project is around $390,000. We would look to design this project this next year. No right-of-way would be needed because, again, we're using the existing infrastructure so that we could implement this project at the same time that we implement the Rose Hill and Owyhee intersection project. The additional treatment options that we are recommending are traffic circles, bulb out treatments at Vista and Rose Hill and at Peasley and Rose Hill, and speed feedback signs. Those are the ones that receive the most support from the residents and the users of the corridor. The one that didn't get as much support was the speed bumps, in essence. Those didn't get as high of a percentage as we like to see for that type of treatment. So staff recommendation is adoption of the Rose Hill temporary traffic calming study as presented, with alternative 2, with traffic circles, speed feedback signs, and corner treatments as the preferred alternative. And I will stand for any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Again, impressive outreach.
Thank you.
Rain or shine.
Rain or shine, yes.
Very good. Thank you, Christy. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
Same as your comment. Good job.
Yeah, Madam President, I just want to say, Christy, great job. Thank you for your tenacious energy, and I just think this is fantastic. My only question is, how do you plan on evaluating after we do this temporary concept?
Madam President, Commissioner Pickering, yeah, we will be taking analysis of the corridor both before and after treatments are put in, as well as the adjacent corridors. So we're going to look at Rose Hill, we're going to look at Cassia and Alpine on either side to get that information ahead of time, and then afterwards we'll go back out. We'll let it sit and simmer a little bit. We've got to let time for the treatment, for the users to get used to using the new treatment before we go back and do some analysis, because we want to make sure that we're also taking that information after they're used to using it to get accurate traffic, pedestrian and cycling use, and make sure we're doing that during the appropriate times of the year, during school times when there's probably more use of the bike and ped infrastructure. So yes, we'll give it adequate time. We typically look we're probably looking 6 months to a year at least. And that's also, we're going to have that permanent installation of the Rose Hill and Owyhee intersection as well.
Perfect. And I just want to say I really appreciate and fully support alternative 2. I think you've done a great job taking the public feedback and applying it to the different options. And I think that does truly represent the best interests of what the neighborhood has asked for. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Further comments or questions?
Madam President and Christy, this is terrific.
You excited?
I'm very excited. And you've been a model of how, a really accountable, public entity comes and says, okay, hey, this online stuff doesn't seem to be coming from the people who are most affected. Let's go and really talk to them. And together you co-created these concepts and understood really what it's going to impact. But the flip side of it, because there's a shared ownership, they're going to be providing you information right away on what's working and what might need to be tweaked. They'll also, when somebody starts driving down that road who's been zipping down it from the west side, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is different. They say, we don't like this. The neighbors will back us up and say, hey, this is our neighborhood. You have a neighborhood too. We have a neighborhood. So I really, really appreciate the way in which you approach this, and the price tag so low compared to. I mean, I think that's probably just the cost of the concrete we put in on those crossings at Peasley, which I assume we're going to monitor that too, because there's some aspect of that crossing. You said three things: the corner treatments. I'm looking at the bottom of this page. And I saw four things. One, corner treatments at Vista Avenue. When you're saying corner treatments, does that include also the second one, which is you say bulb outs at intersections?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought those then got combined.
I combined
so
those.
It's corner treatments at Vista Avenue, curb bulb outs at intersections, speed limit feedback signs, and traffic circles, but not the speed cushions, which makes sense because speed cushions are usually just put in because there are no other features that would get people to focus on driving the speed limit. So in the motion will include, I'm assuming when we say preferred alternative number 2, it will include these.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner McKinney?
Madam President, yes, thank you. Just quickly, Christy, again, thank you for this. I just want to clarify that what we're looking at here, the alternative 2, this is the same as what we were looking at a couple of weeks ago when we had our discussion of this. So all the details are the same. We've been through it all. We know what's going on. I just had one question as I was thinking about this. You talked about the chicane effect of having the parking being preserved in certain places on one side or the other. Do we have segments of the street where you have driveway access on one side where now the parking on that side is gone, but it's on the other side? Is that a portion of the corridor here?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that's correct. I mean, we're to be able to get the treatment options that were in there, we will lose parking on one side of the street or the other. We did a pretty in-depth parking analysis, and there are definite areas of the corridor where it is not being parked at all, to be honest. We had between 0 and under 2% of a section of the corridor was actually being parked. There's a ton of front-on housing along the entire corridor, but there are areas where they are heavily parked, and that's what we heard from the residents. They were like, hey, we want to retain parking here, and the traffic analysis showed that. So those are the areas that we would like to retain that parking on the site it's being utilized, and then shift it where we can, and then again where it's being utilized. We want to try to be as cognizant of those needs of the residents as possible. So they're not parking on one side and having to cross. There may be instances where they may need to do that though. Yes.
During your public outreach, was that specific situation discussed with the residents when you talked with them?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further comments? All right, thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
Ms. Spencer?
Yes, we have a Mr. Barnum that would like to speak.
Mr. Barnum? Oh, come on up. Go ahead and just state your name and address for our record, please.
Ben Burnham, 4305 West Fairmont. I'm really excited that this is the proposal that was selected, and so that's really cool. I bike a lot, and so this area is really difficult. Fairmont's right by Emerald, and so to go over to the Vista corridor on a bike kind of stinks. You got to take a risk somewhere, and then Vista gets into Vista. But I really appreciate this, so thank you. The other thing, just a little item to add is just, I remember going through the survey when it was coming out, and one of the options was to have no biking, I believe. And my feedback there would just to be that we not think that way going into the future as well, especially as these neighborhoods change and become more dense. I feel like that can cause a lot of friction unnecessarily when it's very likely, I would imagine, that we wouldn't go forward with a non-biking solution. And to put that in front of residents, I think can become very confusing, not helpful. Not saying anyone's bad or anything like that, but I just remember seeing that and becoming very worried, especially because this seems to be a relatively large change in a very good way. And so that was my other feedback. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your feedback. Thank you. That's it?
That's it.
All right. Ms. Insma, do you have anything further you'd like to add?
No, Madam
All
President.
right. Well, thank you very much. Well done. And we will go ahead and close the public hearing.
Thank you.
All right, commissioners, this is before you.
Madam President,
Commissioner Pickering.
I move that we adopt the concept for Rose Hill Street temporary traffic calming in the Roosevelt Street Vista Avenue street segment.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, as
Right.
advised by staff.
We
Second.
have a motion before us. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Well done, Ms. Inselman. All right, our next item, Boise Central Bench Neighborhood Transportation Plan Update, another request for adoption and another hearing. I will go ahead and open right now as we welcome Mr. Bautista. We will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you for being here.
Good evening, Commission. For the record, my name is Edison Bautista, ACHD Senior Transportation Planner. This evening, I'm presenting to you the final recommendation for the Boise Central Bench Neighborhood Transportation Plan Update. We spent the past 10 months in the community of the Boise Central Bench working with the public to identify transportation projects that were not previously identified in adopted 2012 neighborhood plan. Staff is confident in the process and the updated plan produced and recommends the adoption of the Boise Central Bench Neighborhood Transportation Plan Update as written. In this slide, we present the Boise Central Bench planning area and the key destinations that are, and the key destination in the area. The light polygon delineates the planning area. The Boise Central Bench Neighborhood Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan was first adopted back in 2012. Through this planning process, we conducted a comprehensive review of the planning area and worked with the community to identify potential bicycle and pedestrian projects. At the time, we conducted a robust public outreach with the use of online tools and in-person meetings. With the use of the public input and a comprehensive review of the area, a total of 112 pedestrian projects and 57 bicycle projects were identified. Since 2012, ACHD has worked diligently in the scoping, prioritization, design, and construction of these projects. In this slide, we wanted to display a map of the completed projects in the Boise Central Bench. In summary, ACHD has completed a total of 54 projects, which represent 36 pedestrian projects, 16 bicycle projects, and 2 crossing projects. These projects included the Cassius Street Bikeway, the Shoshone Street Bikeway, Emerald Street Bike and Pedestrian Improvement, Alpine Street Pedestrian Improvement, and the Philippines Street Bicycle Pedestrian Improvement, just to mention a few. In total, all these projects represent an approximate investment of $25 million to date, not including projects associated with maintenance, safe sidewalk, and ADA improvements. In addition to the work done, ACHD continues to work and program projects in the Boise Central Bench area. Some of these projects include the Kootenai Street Project, the Roosevelt Street Project, and the Nesper Street projects, just to mention a few. With the update of the Boise Central Bench Neighborhood Plan, ACHD kicks off the start of a new cycle of updates to all the adopted neighborhood plans. Through this update, one of our main goals is to report back to the community the level of completions of the projects identified in the 2012 adopted plan. Additionally, since the adoption of the Boise Central Bench, plans, guidelines, and best practice have changed within ACHD. Our intent is to implement these new plans and updated guidelines to the updated plan, including the roadways to bikeway master plan and the livable street performance measures. Consistent with the neighborhood plan process, we continue to engage and work with the community to identify transportation needs in the Boise Central Bench area. During the September 14 Commission work session, staff provided an overview of the tools used during the public involvement. In summary, the public involvement consisted of community and stakeholder meetings, a school outreach effort, and a virtual engagement tool that included interactive comment map and survey. During the online comment period, we received a total of 300 comments that were categorized into bicycle, pedestrian, safety, traffic congestion, and other type of comments. Some of the comments that we heard from the public included sidewalk, bicycle, and traffic concerns along the Orchard Street corridor, sidewalk gaps at different locations like Alpine Street, Oahe Street, Roosevelt Street, Irvin Street, requests for bicycle improvements on Irvin Street and Latah Street, and requests of crossing opportunity locations like Overland and Philippi, Rose Hill and Oahe, and Alpine and Orchard Street, just to mention a few. In addition to the public outreach, ACAC staff coordinated with the Boise School District to reach out to the schools within the planning area to learn more about how students travel to and from school, their experiences, and their challenges. This outreach was done through an online survey where schools were encouraged to have students share their experiences and share their concerns when traveling to and from school. From this effort, 3 schools participated in the Boise Central Bench area, with 8 classrooms participating between 4th grade and 6th grade, representing a total of 162 students. Some of the comments received included concerns with vehicle speed, busy streets, and having to cross major roadways. With a comprehensive review of the existing condition, the adopted plan, and the public outreach data collected, a new recommended project list was developed that combines project of the 2012 adopted project list, the projects program in the adopted integrated 5-year work plan, and the new projects identified that consists of 88 projects, where 16 are bicycle projects, 38 pedestrian and 88 projects, 7 crossing projects, 9 intersection improvement, 2 shared use pathway project, 2 railway improvement projects, 3 bridges project, 8 traffic calming project, and 3 planning projects. Additionally, staff would like to highlight, as shown in this slide and the slide before, that there's a total of 50 projects currently programmed in the adopted integrated 5-year work plan 2022-2026. This reaffirms ACAC commitment to continue the implementation of these neighborhood plans and the adopted projects. The remaining 38 projects break down into 18 new projects and 20 previously identified projects. These projects include the Alpine Street Bikeway Project, Latah Street Bikeway and Pedestrian Improvement, Target Street Bikeway, and the Orchard Street Concept Study, just to mention a few. The Boise Central Bench Neighborhood Transportation Plan is a project identification tool. The projects identified will be evaluated and programmed as part of the integrated 5-year work plan and the budget process, in close coordination with the City of Boise and the Boise School District. Staff is confident in the process and the plan produced and recommends the adoption of the Boise Central Bench Neighborhood Transportation Plan update as written.
All right, thank you very much.
This, I conclude my presentation.
Well done. Commissioners, any questions, comments? Commissioner Hanson?
Madam President and Ensign, this is great. I just really appreciate the enormous amount of work that goes into this. As you say, this is a high-level project identification tool. I guess I'm increasingly amused at how, we got all these categories, 9 separate categories. And I was thinking, okay, let me just pick like NESPERS. It fits into pedestrian and ADA, bike, crossings, roadway, traffic calming, intersections, I don't know, and planning. So at least 6. So from the neighborhood standpoint, it's like, well, the way I interact with this area is to do with pedestrian or something. So let me look, oh, it's not there. Well, actually, it's under the traffic calming, or it's under, so I think what we're going to end up probably doing is thinking in terms of, at least in terms of how we lay this out, more probably as to size, big projects, little projects, length of corridors, et cetera, because we keep, figuring out categories. But, that's neither here nor there. You basically cover the universe in this. this is great. This is a neighborhood. This area was developed with big old wide roads that are all connected. And of course, we've now dealt with Rose Hill and Kootenai and Cassia and Espers. And we've identified a couple of others where the unintended consequences, that is, people use it to drive very fast through those neighborhoods, creating safety issues. And so we're figuring out how to do that. A lot of those safety issues are non-existent in areas where there isn't that connectivity. So the trade-off of connectivity is we have to make sure it's also safe for everybody. And so this is really good, and it gives us an idea. You also have to deal with, I think, 7 different neighborhood associations, in the Central Bench, some of which are really active and some of which aren't. So this is really phenomenal work, and I really appreciate what you've done on this, and I look forward as we drill down, as you know, on the projects I'm particularly eager to move forward on that I've been talking about for 10 years.
Very good, very good. Thank you. I guess we do have somebody that's signed up, so we'll go ahead and let them come up. Ms. Spencer?
Sarah. Right of left, Sarah.
Sarah left,
Sarah
okay.
Cunningham.
Oh, yeah.
That was it?
One of the neighborhood leaders.
Would anybody else in the audience like to? Warmed up? You want to come on up?
Hey, you live up there. Got the name on your t-shirt.
Yeah, right? Go ahead, if you just state your name and address, please.
Yeah. Ben Burnham, 4305 West Fairmont. Again, thank you. I'm like giddy because this is such a cool plan for our area. I live, again, right along Roosevelt and Emerald, so Roosevelt getting done here to become, again, a lot of my perspective is trying to make things more bikeable, walkable. I think that really connects our community and makes things safer, and cars go slower, which is a huge concern for a lot of our neighborhood streets, I know. But the big thing, I guess, out of all this plan that my hope, if I could communicate effectively one thing to you all and to the folks over there, is just the Orchard Corridor, the Orchard Corridor, the Orchard Corridor. However many times I have to say it for where it like sticks in everyone's mind, whatever that mind science is. But the Orchard Corridor is, I would encourage you, if you have not, try and just walk in that corridor. I guess the part that I'm specifically referring to is really from the interstate to where they're building Franklin. I guess that's the part that I frequent a lot, so that's the part I will speak to. It's incredibly unpleasant to walk on. It's incredibly dangerous. I wouldn't even try and bike on it. Just even trying to bike to a business location along there is intimidating. The sidewalks are right on the street, if there are sidewalks. And so I can only imagine if any of these places have someone that's needing, like in a chair or something like that. We literally don't have sidewalks on one of the main corridors in our city. And it's in an area it's always mattered, but it's going to continue to grow a lot because of its location, and it's not very accessible. So that would be my big thing. I think that's mentioned on here. I'm not a planner. I don't do anything like this, so I'm not entirely sure what all the stuff means, but I know in my perfect world, something like Emerald would happen along Orchard, where you have bikeable, safe, wide bike spots. You have a center turn lane. I remember reading that map that folks put comments on, and that was what a lot of folks were wanting, is a turn lane, because it's also incredibly dangerous. You have people going very fast and stopping. So Orchard. And then the one context I guess I would give is Push and Pour, the Still, and a new Wilder restaurant went in on Layta and Alpine. And there's people outside all the time. There's tons of bikes. There's all this stuff. And yet there's not a parking problem. Because one, I guess there's a vacant lot across the street. But two, a lot of the neighborhood can walk and bike there, which is really exciting. We have incredible places on Orchard, some of the most unique spots in town. And you don't see that vibrancy via human beings. You see a lot of cars go by really fast, but you don't see the vibrancy of folks walking there. I know for my friends, we want to support the Orchard businesses as much as we possibly can, but we also want to sit outside when it's nice. And we can't do that. Idaho Craft Brewers put something outside the front of their building, and it's literally surrounded by parking stalls on concrete and 2 feet away from Orchard, or however, whatever the regulation, it feels 2 feet when you're there. And so I think those are 2 good examples that this really well done plan will try and help. But I think if we can continue to prioritize Orchard, because it ties in almost all of the neighborhood associations in this area as well. And I actually think it's something that there would be a lot of agreement on, because we all have to experience it. A lot of people are just flying through our neighborhoods. We would like a way to enjoy it and have some folks go a little bit slower and see it too. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate all your comments. Two good projects tonight going forward. So, all right. Anybody else like to comment? All right. Hearing none. Edinson, any final thoughts? And all right. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners, you've got this item before you.
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
before we go to a motion, I just have a couple of questions for
Okay,
Edison.
absolutely.
And I don't know if we can bring back the
I
PowerPoint
closed the
slides.
public hearing. That's okay. You can still make a comment. Okay.
The last 2 slides of your presentation, I just wanted to look at those discuss them for a minute. Primarily, my question relates to what are the next steps now? As in, here's this plan. What happens next? How do these different projects get implemented? I just thought that would be helpful to clarify that.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney. Yes, great question. So, as the projects are adopted, if the projects are, the plan is adopted as presented, certainly those projects are then move forward in the process towards that integrated firework plan. So at that point, it will be a process of where we will work with the partner agencies to define what their priorities will be and how that weighs within the entire spectrum of the all the countywide projects that we have identified through all the neighborhood plans. So at that point, then, depending on the priority, it will go into the adoption of the integrated federal plan, the budget, and all those elements that go into play that takes you into the scoping, design, and finally the construction. So it's a several-year process that takes into play, but right after this project identification process, it goes into the integrated federal plan for further review and further determination, I guess.
Okay. So, and I guess really my question is, and really it's my question to clarify from my mind internally, what's our process for doing this? Do we take are we going to prioritize these projects within this community area and each do the same thing with each of the other community plans that we have, neighborhood plans that we have, and then from there pick the top projects from there? Or how do we do that? How do we how do we distinguish which ones are the most important, which ones we move up on the 5-year work plan, and so on? And maybe I'm going too far into the weeds on this, but
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, before Christy goes into it, because she's the expert in the integrated federal, certainly we provide a list of all the projects identified to each of the cities. And the cities have, at that point, they select what their priorities are within their each respective area. And then after that, we go through that prioritization process, which the Commission have reviewed in the last couple of weeks, and that Tom has worked on it, and he goes through that process. But just in case I miss anything, I will give you the time.
Thank you. Covered it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney. So within the plan itself, there are some rankings of like high, medium, low. But as far as the projects themselves, once they're identified, they come to me, and we rank all of the projects against each other countywide. So that's part of our prioritization methodology, is they all get ranked against each other.
Okay. So
we have community programs and then roads and intersections, but they're all ranked against countywide, not by specific area.
So the different types of projects get put into their different categories.
That's
and then we use our standard procedure countywide to look at all of them. Okay, that makes sense.
Correct.
All right, good, thank you.
All right, any further comments?
So, Madam President, I just pointed out to Ben, see, there's a whole lot of work ahead, because just because we have a plan, so eventually there's still a lot of work. And I tell you, I've been working on NESPERS for 10 years, and we're finally getting a little bit of design detail going on that. So it does take a long time, a prioritization process, and all the other players, but this is the first step. So I don't want to burst your bubble, but it does take a long, long time to move things through the process. Thanks, Commissioner McKinney.
Madam
All right,
President,
thank you, Commissioner Pickering.
I move to adopt the Boise Central Bench Neighborhood Transportation Plan as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion before us. Any further discussion?
Just
Seeing
one,
none-
just one thing. When I first moved to Idaho nearly 50 years ago, I lived on either side of Orchard for 10 years. And so I've watched with a great deal of anticipation everything that you have talked about and everything that the city of Boise and others brought to our attention in 2015, I believe, about placemaking in the Orchard area. And I hope to be around when that starts to come into fruition. And because of that, I'll be voting in favor of this.
Thank you very much. All right, no further discussion. We have this matter before us. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Good job. Thank you very much, Edinson. Appreciate all your hard work. Now, public communications. Is anybody here that would like to address the commission? All right. All right. Then we will adjourn for the evening. Thank you all for sticking with us.